Well, you've got potentially imminent attacks on Israel. You've got one stock market having its worst day in nearly 40 years. And, oh, by the way, we have local elections coming to the Kansas City area tomorrow. So nothing to talk about on a Monday morning. It's great to be here on KCMO 95.7 FM. John, hello.
Hey, the only thing worse is it could be raining.
Although I'll take a little bit off this 98-degree weather we've got. But
edge off of that, huh?
That's coming tonight, right?
I think so.
Supposed to get a break. Going to get those northerly winds, as I heard one of our Fox, or I should say KCTV5 meteorologists talking about. So that's some good news as we get the week started here on KCMO. But we do have all these elections tomorrow. And clearly, if you've watched 7 seconds of the Olympics, you can't watch it without seeing political ads. And many more of them, obviously, are coming from the Missouri side of the state line, where if you win your primary as a Republican, you're most likely going to win your election, especially statewide. So really, tomorrow is the bigger of the two races on these statewide races in Missouri. Because with the way the state is made up right now, if you win your primary, you've got a great shot of getting yourself elected into office. So you've got, obviously, the governor's race at the very top. And if I'm handicapping this thing right now, our guy Mark Van Sickle's off today, but I'm going to use some of his sports betting terminology. If I were handicapping this thing right now, I would put Mike Kehoe at the top of the list with the best odds to win tomorrow. Not overwhelming by any stretch, but I would just give him the edge over Jay Ashcroft. And I would have Bill Eigel running in that third position. So I'd have Mike Kehoe at something like plus 120, meaning put down $1, win $1.20. I would put Jay Ashcroft at plus 140, and then I would have Bill Eigel at plus 220, meaning $1 wins you $2.20 on Bill Eigel. Not that he can't win. All three of those guys can pull it off tomorrow. Depends who shows up, whether it's supposed to be good, who's going to get out to the polls, who's most aggressive for their candidate, who had the best ground game combined with obviously having the advertising dollars you need to get your name ID up there. But I would stack it Kehoe, Ashcroft, and Eigel. And Ashcroft, has kind of had this surge, it feels like, over the last couple of weeks, which I didn't expect to happen. He's kind of been, I don't know, I feel like that campaign has not really gotten going like a lot of us thought it would, just based on the last name. And maybe it's because of money. I don't know what it is, but it feels like the last week or two, there's finally been a little mojo there, and, better late than never. Maybe taking some of that wind out of the Bill Eigel sails, so to speak. So that's where that race stacks up at the top. And then you've got Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State on down. On the Kansas side, it's really about the 3rd District primary, where you have Prashanth Reddy and Karen Cernovich, who is, they're both compelling candidates. They both have good stories. Reddy's got a lot more of the national attention from the NRCC. It doesn't mean that Karen can't win. She can. Listen, I've talked to both on the show, and I believe that both are going to be big underdogs to Sharice Davids. But you got to have money in this race to get this thing done. So we'll see how it plays out on the Kansas side coming up tomorrow as well. And don't forget, you're going to be voting. All of Missouri is going to be voting on this Amendment 4, which will make sure KCPD remains fully funded. A yes vote tomorrow on Amendment 4 in Missouri, not just for KCMO residents, but across the state, will make sure Kansas City funds the police department to the tune of 25% of the general fund. So that's what we're watching tomorrow. You're going to hear from a lot of the candidates throughout the morning here on KCMO, and we will do a candidate call-in segment at 7:30. So if you are somebody who is running in a race that we have not spent really any time focused on, just because they're smaller races and we can't, 7:30 this morning, you're going to call in, and you can give a 1-minute pitch on your candidacy. And here's the catch. The catch is this. You will get 60 seconds. I will time it on my phone, and you will be dumped after 60 seconds. This will make it potentially very entertaining as well. But if you can't make your pitch, as I put on social media last night in 60 seconds, that's on you. I want to get to as many folks as I can. We did this last week. We got about 5 people in 10 minutes. I can't have the filibustering. Give me a 60-second pitch, and we're moving on. So that will be at 7:30 this morning if you're running, or if somebody you know is running, let them know that is the time to get involved, John.
You know, the computer always has a nice template when you do a resume. Should we give them a template?
Yeah.
It's like, hi, my name's John Anthony. You can say you're a former vet or your current position, whatever you feel is applicable to the position you're running for.
Yes.
So say your name and what you're doing, and then on with and hit the main one first.
Go.
Yeah.
Get at it, man. I mean, we can't waste time. And if you can't do it in 30 to 60 seconds, that's on you. You got to be able to keep these things tight. So we'll be doing that at 7:30 this morning on KCMO. 60 seconds. That's it. You're getting dumped after that. So make it pithy, as our good friend Bill O'Reilly would say here on KCMO Talk Radio.
Okay, I got it.
Now we're all clear. Pithy. Pithy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, someone who obviously is not pithy when they speak is Donald Trump, right? Not his specialty. He spent his time over the weekend rallying down in Georgia. And I don't get it. I can't figure it out. But Donald Trump, as he has been since he got into politics, has been his own worst enemy. So he's down in Georgia, and he's ragging on the governor, Brian Kemp. Now, to set the scene here, I was talking to somebody yesterday down in Georgia who's very involved in the political climate down there. And what they told me is that Brian Kemp, who overwhelmingly won re-election a couple of years ago, has basically handed his ground game over to Donald Trump and Trump's team. They've said, here you go, take this ground game that we've got and use it to win this state. That's what Brian Kemp's team has told Donald Trump. So Trump's in Georgia on Saturday night, and for some reason, because the pollers are tightening and he's worried about election fraud or something, he's now ragging on Brian Kemp, the governor, who's a Republican, to be very clear, and who supports Donald Trump, along with his Secretary of State. Take a listen.
But your governor, Kemp, and Raffensperger are doing everything possible to make 2024 difficult for Republicans to win. What are they doing? I don't know. They got something in mind, They got a little something in mind. Kemp is very bad for the Republican Party. He wouldn't do anything,
So this is the guy, Brian Kemp, who has given the Trump team basically all of his resources. Take what I've got and use it as you see fit. Win yourself this state. And, Trump's up there on Saturday night railing on the guy. It makes you want to just bang your head against the wall. Like, for those of us who realize that this is an incredibly tumultuous time in not just American history, but world history, and we need somebody who has done the job and done it well, and despite some of the sideshows, been very effective on the policy front, and wants to see Donald Trump back in the White House. This is the stuff that just makes you sit there and say, what the heck are you doing, man? What are you doing? There are plenty of people in Georgia to attack. Stacey Abrams, I don't know, maybe go after the person who's like on the ballot against you coming up most likely in November and is closing the gap in the polls. But no, we don't want to knock Kamala Harris. Wouldn't want to knock Stacey Abrams. Let's go after the Republican governor who has handed me his entire ground game to try to win the state. I just don't get it for the life of me. And frankly, I feel like the campaign peaked the minute Donald Trump stepped on the stage at the RNC about 2.5 weeks ago now. That was all the momentum trending in their direction. Post-debate, post-near assassination, incredible week at the RNC. But really, since then, you've got an RNC speech for Donald Trump that went way too long and way too in the weeds. And that was just followed up with now Kamala getting in, the media fawning over her, Trump getting a little startled by the whole thing. And now here he is over the weekend bagging on Republicans who are helping him win swing states. Make it make any sense, because I don't. Now, speaking of things that don't make a lot of sense, I mean, maybe they do. But yesterday, on the other side of the world, It was one of the worst days in stock market history for this country. What does that mean for us as the markets get set to open up in just over 2 hours? We'll get to that coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and streaming on a Monday morning. It's great to be back on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Well, at 6:20, we may be heading for one of the craziest days and craziest weeks in the stock market, certainly in at least a year and a half since, you had those runs on the mid-sized banks in early 2023, but possibly since the pandemic. And I don't say that with any joy. Nobody should, because the market, the one thing that Joe Biden has had going for him and Kamala Harris as a result has been a stock market that has, just gone bonkers post-COVID. A lot of that driven, of course, by big tech stocks and, the fact that the U.S. is still the best bet in the world when it comes to the economy and the stock market. But you just had here overnight one of the wildest days in trading history in Japan. Japan's stock average fell 12.5% overnight in its worst day since the Tuesday following Black Monday in 1987. So you've got to go back 37 years, nearly 37 years, to have a day like Japan just had in the stock market. Other Asian markets also fell. South Korea, Taiwan, both down more than 8%. S&P futures fell by more than 2% in Asia, as U.S. markets, of course, get prepared to open up here in just a couple of hours. Now, the Japanese market has fallen more than 25% in the last 3-4 weeks since July 11th, which is when they hit an all-time high. The yen is strengthening against the dollar, and market movements that normally take months or years have really happened over just a few days. So now you've got a U.S. economy that came out Friday with a weak jobs report. You have the Fed poised to start cutting rates potentially as early as September is when that's expected here coming up next month. Although there now is a possibility, by the way, there's an increasing likelihood that an emergency Fed rate cut this week could happen. Not saying it's likely, but the odds are increasing that the Fed could do an emergency rate cut sometime this week. And a lot of it will depend on what happens with the markets today. Now, the volatility index, something else to look at. The volatility index is up 122% today, and the market hasn't even opened, the VIX. And since July 1, this volatility index is up 328%. It's at its highest levels since the pandemic. So we are seeing pandemic levels of volatility right now, is what we're seeing. And all of this is really driven by fears of slowing U.S. growth. Now, for those of us who have been talking about this and have been sitting here on Main Street, we've been saying for months that what's going on Main Street is different than what's happening on Wall Street. However, we got these jobs reports that would come in and they would kind of look okay, and people would say, okay, maybe we're going to pull off this soft landing and everything's going to be okay, and there's not going to be this colossal catastrophic recession. And by the way, I'm not predicting that right now, but it's certainly more likely today than it was even a week ago. And that's in part what the markets are reacting to. Now, it's also possible the big shot investors are just trying to take some profits here. And they're saying, maybe the economy softens a little bit, but now's the time to grab some profits. We made a lot of money, especially on some of these big tech stocks. And now's our time to just kind of jump out and take our profits and, stack up some cash and wait for a 10, 15% drop and then buy again. Maybe it's just that. I hope that's what it is. Now, if you're just average Joe, like most of us, don't be playing that game, as Dave Ramsey would say. Just invest, close your eyes, and look at it in 30 years or 20 years or 15 years, whatever it might be for you, and don't really try to play the day-to-day day trader game. Let the big shots do that, but don't get involved because you can't be guessing highs and lows. That's too difficult. But hopefully that's a large part of what it is. And the Fed will cut rates here coming up at some point in the next few weeks, and that'll be that. And we all move on, and we all, are able to just kind of get through this rough patch. There's not a massive recession. But if we do get to a point where there is a larger recession that does end up coming to fruition at some point in the next few months, then politically speaking, obviously, that's good for Donald Trump. But here's the thing. I would prefer there be no recession and then Donald Trump just take care of business anyway. Like, Trump doesn't need a recession to win, at least not as of right now. If he keeps blasting Republican governors in Georgia, then he might need a recession to win. But as of right now, he does not need a recession to win. So the best case scenario is things just kind of stay where they're at. Maybe there's a little volatility the next few weeks, and Trump can still very much take care of business. But if this thing does get really hairy in the weeks ahead, into the fall, then that puts Kamala Harris and whoever her running mate is, and apparently we're going to find that out tomorrow, very much behind the eight ball and in a very difficult spot. I mean, it's very tough. Just look back to 2008, right? John McCain running as the Republican, the heir to George W. Bush. It is very difficult when you are the party in power and you are running as the party that's been in power and there is some type of major economic event. We should not be predicting that, obviously, but and I'm not going to here. We'll get some experts on the show in the next day or two that will have a better idea as to what's going on. Some of our friends over at Fox Business. But, man, it is going to be a very fascinating day today and an incredible week as well to see how all of this plays out. 913-408-7957 as we get it rolling on a busy Monday morning on KCMO. Those markets open up in 2 hours. Coming up, the Morgan Wallen concerts late last week. You had some police involvement and also some misinformation on a shirt Morgan Wallen wore. We'll get to it next. Well, it looks like those of you who were at Morgan Wallen on Thursday and Friday night had an absolutely outstanding time. I was out of town, but I would have loved to have been there. It looked like they were great concerts. And Friday night, of course, you got the walkout with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones. If you haven't seen the video, I guess what Morgan Wallen does is before he comes on stage, he has a walkout from underneath the tunnel, and it plays on the big screen. So he shows up, and there's no point in playing the audio because it's mostly just like people screaming. But he shows up on the big screen, and he's got a number 7 Chiefs jersey on. And then suddenly you see him being flanked by Mahomes to his right, Kelce to his left, and Chris Jones is like the bouncer standing right behind him. It's actually a pretty great scene. And then they start walking out below the tunnel at Arrowhead, and the place is going nuts. So social media starts going wild, saying that Morgan Wallen is rolling out in a Harrison Butker jersey. And as someone who is a new owner of a Harrison Butker jersey, it is true he's wearing number 7. But since social media, I'm thinking to myself, okay, is he actually wearing a Harrison Butker jersey? Because then I start reading some things suggesting it was not a Harrison Butker jersey. And then I start seeing some photos. And I talked and texted with a lot of people who were at the show on Friday, and they all confirmed this. And then the video started to come out saying that he had a number 7 Chiefs jersey on that had his name on the back of it, Wallen. Now, before you say to yourself, well, hold on a second, he just put his name on the back of a Harrison Butker jersey. Well, no. Morgan Wallen, since he's been on this tour, likes to wear jerseys of teams in which the city he's playing in, resides in. And he always has a customized number 7 jersey because that was his high school baseball number when he played down in Tennessee. So you can look that up for yourself. Morgan Wallen always wears, when he customizes a jersey, a number 7 jersey. I think he had a Bo Jackson Royals jersey on the first night on Thursday. But on Friday night, he had on a number 7 Wallen jersey. So still, I'm seeing headlines like, Morgan Wallen stirs the pot by wearing Harrison Butker's number at Arrowhead concert. Well, hold on. Why isn't this Matt Castle's number, right? Matt Castle rocked number 7. I mean, Harrison Butker doesn't own the number. I love Harrison Butker, but he doesn't own the number 7. Like, Morgan Wallen customized a number 7 jersey. He does that in every city he's in. So if you saw that on social media over the weekend, pump the brakes. That's not actually what was going on. And I was looking at Morgan Wallen's YouTube channel early this morning, and there's a YouTube short video he's got of him walking out at Arrowhead on Friday. And the first thing they flash to is number 7, and they show the back of the jersey that says Wallen. So we can put that rumor to rest, John, here on a Monday morning at 6:38, all right?
Thank you for walking me down memory lane. I remember 2 of these guys very well. Great punters. Xenon and Andrecision were the number in 78. And also Jeff Gossett. Very good punters. The Chiefs needed punters back when those guys played. And Matt Castle, as you mentioned. But Ron Jaworski was the other one I had forgotten about. He was here for a year. When Marty first came, he brought in Mike Webster. You know, he brought in some veteran help, and he brought in Jaws from Philly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know Ron Jaworski spent a year here in Kansas City.
Yeah.
All we ever think about are his Eagles days.
Sure.
How about that? All
well,
right.
He carried a clip. Webster contributed. The rest of the guys were kind of around for, spirit.
Well, I think that Morgan Wallen should put out something on social media saying it was a customized Wallen jersey, but if it wasn't, it was a Ron Jaworski jersey from 1989. That's what we need, damn it. Oh, my goodness. All right, so put that to rest. But if you were there, man, I'm jealous. It looked like an outstanding show on Thursday and Friday night. But I'll tell you right now, the Friday night show, when you get Mahomes, Kelsey, and Chris Jones showing up, that's big time right there. That is big time stuff. And in hindsight, the Friday night made a lot more sense because if those guys were going to show up and come down from St. Joe, obviously the end of the week when practice is wrapping up made a lot more sense than a Thursday. Now, on a more serious note, I also saw many of you on Friday night thinking that something happened with Morgan Wallen. Like, I guess there was an hour between when one of the opening acts performed and then Morgan Wallen came on stage. He didn't come on, I guess, on Friday till like 9:45 or something like that. It was almost 10 o'clock. It was pretty late. And it was an hour between acts. So people are starting to be like, is he even here? I saw that speculation happening on social media. Well, as it turned out, you heard John mention top of the hour news, an Illinois man was arrested for making a terroristic threat to shoot Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Aaron Brown, Winchester, Illinois, probably a loser Bears fan, made the threat on social media. Vikings.
Yeah, his girlfriend ratted him out on that.
Oh, really? Okay. All right, now we know. I didn't realize that. Even worse. Oh, okay. Made the threat on social media before Wallen's show. This per the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. Jean Peters Baker's all over this one, by the way. She's, looking to plant that flag once again. So the individuals were not identified by authorities. 2 individuals were not identified by authorities, but Mahomes and Kelce were, of course, there on Friday night. So Kansas City police were monitoring these threats when they observed this from an X account saying, quote, 2 of, they say, quote, Mr. Redacted at Arrowhead with the wife. If he brings out blah, 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 or blah, 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 both names redacted, I'll take the effing shot. F them. That was the post that was put up on social media, John.
Yeah, as it turns out, it's serious, right?
Yes.
But this was an idiot.
Yes.
Who put something on social media? I didn't think anybody see it.
Yes.
Right. So fortunately, it's that, I guess, and we've established that.
How stupid do you have to be, by the way, 3 weeks after a former president nearly gets assassinated, and you're talking about taking the shot at certainly one of the most famous people on the planet right now in Patrick Mahomes.
Yep. I'd like to solve the puzzle, Pat. Read the room.
Yeah.
Right?
Man. Mm-hmm. And by the way, maybe we need to put the Kansas City police on Donald Trump's security detail. How about that?
Got down to that one, didn't they?
You know, they figured that one out. They would not have let Thomas Crooks get the shot off. KCPD would have done a hell of a lot better job than the Secret Service and the Butler County Podunk Police did nearly 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago now. I mean, seriously, I'd put them in charge. They got right on this thing, monitoring social media, finding the individual, and arresting them way before anything has any possibility of happening. But as John noted, this was just some knucklehead on social media. And guess what? 99 times out of 100, it is. But if you're in law enforcement, you don't take that chance. If you're the secret freaking service, you don't take that chance. They don't know what's a joke. They don't know what's somebody mouthing off on social media. It's not their job to speculate that. It's their job to make sure if any threat does exist, they investigate it and they make an arrest around it. So thank goodness it was what it was. It was taken care of. But if you were waiting an hour to see Morgan Wallen on Friday night, now you know why. 913-408-7957. That's the studio line and the text line here on KCMO. Jay Ashcroft wants to be the next governor of Missouri. He's on the ballot tomorrow when you go to the polls, and he will join us next on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Well, the markets are getting crushed, of course, with the open set for an hour and 8 minutes from now. The Dow futures are off well over 1,000 points. NASDAQ futures getting blasted. Also down over 1,000 points. And this is after the S&P is coming off its worst week in a few months. So it's going to be a rocky road in the markets today. The Japanese stock market was off 12.5% overnight. So that was their worst day since the Tuesday after Black Monday, 1987. So nearly 37 years for the Japanese stock market. So this is going to be something to watch here as the markets open up in just over 1 hour here on KCMO. Now, on the political front, we'll do the candidate call-ins coming up here in 10 minutes. But let me touch on this. All this talk about Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman who it turns out cheated on his first wife with the nanny. Is that something that is worth Donald Trump's time? The short answer is no. If you're Donald Trump and you're going to talk about somebody's infidelities, you probably need to look in the mirror for a quick minute. This is not worth Donald Trump's time whatsoever. And it frankly probably wouldn't be worth anybody's time. If it's the candidate, it's maybe mildly interesting. But if it's the candidate's spouse who cheated on a prior spouse, I'm not sure why that's at all interesting or relevant to the American voter, especially when the American voter put Donald Trump in the White House 8 years ago. They don't care. This is meaningless. But if there's something that I want to draw from this Doug Emhoff knocking up the nanny story, it's something that he said a year ago on MSNBC when he was asked about toxic masculinity. And this is the last guy who, in hindsight, has any business trying to talk about or preach to men about toxic masculinity.
Talk about masculinity for a moment. Has being second gentleman changed your own view of perceived gender roles or what it means to be a man?
This is something I've thought about a lot and something I've spoken about a lot. There's too much of toxicity, masculine toxicity out there, and we've kind of confused what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine, where you've got this trope out there that you've got to be tough and angry and lash out to be strong. It's just the opposite. Strength is how you show your love for people. Strength is how you are for people and how you have their back and how you stick up for other people and pushing out against bullies. I mean, that's what I believe it is. So every time I can speak against this toxicity, we're seeing it with our younger people. We're seeing it in our discourse and our politics, in the media. You're seeing it as it relates to so many of the issues that we're pushing back on. So I think it's a problem, and I'm going to continue to use this platform every time I get to speak out against this toxic masculinity.
Oh, man, is sitting on his high horse preaching about toxic masculinity after he slept with a nanny, and there are reports claiming he once got the nanny pregnant. I don't know where that stands right now. I'm just saying those reports are out there, but all we know and all that's been confirmed is that Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, did cheat on his first wife with the nanny. And now I've got to sit here and listen to this guy preach about toxic masculinity. We can't have these macho men. You got to be a soy boy like me and just stand behind. No. By the way, you know what being a man is, Doug Emhoff? You want to call it toxic masculinity. You want to call it macho man, whatever you want to call it. You know what a man is? A man doesn't cheat on his wife with the nanny. And this guy, I mean, like so many of them, is going to preach to people about what being a man is. By the way, the dude can't even, him and his wife can't even define a man, for crying out loud. Can't define a man or a woman. Now he's going to talk down to you about toxic masculinity when he's got his background? I mean, it's just goofy. Should Trump use it? No. I mean, Trump, of all people, is in no position to talk about infidelities, and it's not going to move the needle whatsoever. It's more just annoying that, once again, just like these people who tell you you can't drive a Suburban, you can't drive your F-150, while they fly private jets all over the world to accept awards on climate change, they're hypocrites. That's what they are. They are utter hypocrites, and the American people can see right through it, and they can smell it from a mile away. And this is just another example of that. Coming up on KCMO, if you are someone who is running for office, and you are in a race that we have not spent a lot of time covering, and you have not been on the show, by the way, that's the other catch, you can call in and give your 60-second elevator pitch. Here's the deal, though. I am going to time these. You get 60 seconds. If we get to the 60-second mark and you're rambling on, we are dumping the call. So this has the potential to be very entertaining, on top of being very informative. Because what I've come to realize is people will say, all right, I'll give my minute pitch, and then, try to be a nice guy, and before you know it, 2.5 minutes later, they're droning on. The election's tomorrow. We don't have time for that. And if you can't pitch yourself in 60 seconds, then you got to find another line of work anyway. So we will do that coming up, 913-408-7957. 913-408-7957. Tomorrow's election day. 60-second pitches. I've got a hard out. It's not going to look good for you if you get dumped after the 60-second mark, so keep it pithy. We'll get to it next. Well, the market sell-off is real right now. 20 minutes in the trading, and here's what we've got. The Dow is off 2.5%, 1,050 points as of 8:50. The S&P is off just over 3%, down 177 points. And the NASDAQ off 730 points. The biggest drop there coming in the NASDAQ, of course, tech has just been getting crushed the last couple of days. And why is this happening? Well, Japan's stock market had its worst day in nearly 37 years during the overnight hours, and a lot of that is just being caused by concerns here in the U.S. after a bad jobs report on Friday. Questions as to what the Fed is going to be doing. Is the Fed late to the party? Should they have started cutting rates already? Are they going to have an emergency rate cut here coming up before they meet in September and, most likely do it then? A lot of questions around how they try to continue with this soft landing. Is this potentially the start of an overdue recession? No one knows the answer. If you knew the answer, you'd play the lottery today. So nobody knows the answer. But this is as tumultuous a time as we have had in the market, certainly in a year and a half since there was the run on those mid-sized banks last March, April. But also, you've got a volatility index that is trading above 65. The VIX, the volatility index, is at a level right now that has only been seen 2 previous times in history. The only 2 times the VIX traded above a 65 were peak pandemic back in 2020 and during the 2008 financial crisis. So the VIX is up 550% from its lows of earlier in July, about a month ago. The S&P 500 has now erased $5 trillion of market cap over the last month alone. And now the S&P is all of about 1% away from falling into correction territory, and the NASDAQ is within 5% of entering bear market territory. So it's an overdue correction. It's here. The question is it anything more than a correction? Is it part of something bigger? Is it Wall Street finally realizing what's going on with Main Street? We don't know, but that's what this week is going to help potentially determine. Other things that have been happening here, NVIDIA's, just getting absolutely smoked, down 30% from its highs of just about a month ago. Apple cratering 5%. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway cut its stake in the iPhone maker in half, so they dumped half of their Apple stock here in the last couple of days. Tesla down. We know, of course, CrowdStrike's just been getting hit since that issue a couple of weeks ago. So it's been bad across the board for tech stocks, and this morning has been ugly during this market sell-off. So we're monitoring it here on KCMO Talk Radio, and it's going to be one of those things that you want to be tapped into here as we go through the week, because there's a lot of moving parts right now in terms of what this could lead to. Is World War III? I don't want to sound too speculative, but we also are watching the Middle East. There are reports that Iran is set to attack Israel today. So that's potentially on the horizon. What is the U.S. involvement with that if things continue to progress and get worse? All those questions are out there on top of this massive market sell-off. But hey, don't worry. Kamala Harris is a woman and black, so, it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great, all right? Just, do the right thing come November 5, because it doesn't matter what's going on in the world or what's going on in the country. It just matters, what someone's gender is and, how they identify and things like that. So you'll be okay. Just vote based on checked boxes, not the job that's actually being done, and you will do what your overlords ask you to do. And you will be happy. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. 913-408-7957. And by the way, speaking of Kamala, she is set to announce her VP pick tomorrow, but it may have leaked over the weekend. Did you see the story that a video? You see this, John?
Answering the call?
Yeah.
Okay. I saw that lead.
Yes. It may have leaked that Kamala Harris is set to pick Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, as her running mate. A video by the mayor of Philadelphia was put up on social media. And it was a video that basically announced Josh Shapiro as the VP. But it may have been posted a little too early. Whoops. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Now, it wasn't like announcing Josh Shapiro as the VP pick, but it was a rah-rah Josh Shapiro video. So was she just promoting the Pennsylvania governor's chances of potentially being the next VP pick for Kamala Harris? Was this an accidental scooping of Kamala Harris's big announcement? No one really knows. But we do know that Kamala is set to announce her pick tomorrow in Philadelphia. I think it'd be weird for her to announce her pick in Philadelphia and for her to not pick the governor of the state that she's announcing in, who's getting rumored, but we've seen crazier things happen. So that, and by the way, that's her best choice. By far. If that can just lock you down one state, then you've done your job as a VP pick. They usually don't deliver much, but this is kind of a weird time, and it may actually make the difference. Coming up after the news, Josh Hawley will be here on KCMO.